The Ibanez RG550 Genesis is a great guitar at a great price. While it's made in Japan, it isn't technically a Prestige. This video addresses the question, aren't both of these guitars made in Japan? What are the differences between them? The point of this video is to highlight these differences so you can make an informed buying decision. I'll be giving information on the Genesis and Prestiges at various price points. This video is not a comprehensive set of reviews for each guitar mentioned, but more a general comparison. Also, spoiler alert, all these guitars are pretty good, so this isn't a video intending to bash any of them by any means. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by any of the brands shown in this video. So let's jump right in and let's first talk about the Genesis. This line of guitars is at the cheapest price point of all the guitars we're going to be talking about, but it's still made in Japan and it feels pretty great. It feels nice and solid. Nothing is loose. The wiring is just fine. It has that classic Ibanez basswood body and maple neck. And I'm noticing the neck profile is pretty thin, as you'd expect, but it's not the absolute thinnest neck profile that Ibanez offers. Don't get me wrong, it is plenty thin. It does encourage thumb behind the neck playing. But there are some modern touches to it. You can feel more of a modern design, and I'll get more into that when I talk about some other Prestiges later in the video. I do have to mention that I had a pretty rocky start with my first Genesis with the setup. The setup, it didn't really want to cooperate at first. And maybe I just got kind of a crazy one, but at least the neck isn't warped or anything like that. I know one of my commenters was mentioning they got a Genesis and the neck was warped. They were able to return it, though, at the shop they got it from and get a replacement from Ibanez. But back to this guitar, after persevering for a few setups, and I am not a pro guitar tech by any means, so it very well could have been a skill issue. But after trying a few times, the setup stuck. It's a very stable guitar, extremely fun to play. It's one of those guitars where you pick it up and just play it for fun. It's basically stock, but you can see I did change just the potentiometer knobs. I put on the metal ones. I ended up liking that guitar so much that when it came time to sell another guitar, I picked up another Genesis, and I have this one in a different tuning. That Road Flare red one that's in drop C, I've got this guy in standard right now. And this one was pretty easy to set up. The first setup stuck. So in saying that, I do recognize every piece of wood, every guitar is a little different. Your experience may vary. But this one's held up just fine, and the other one has too, since the setup stuck. Moving on, talking about the other features, you get the top quality Ibanez bridge. You don't really have anything watered down. The stock pickups are okay. They can get some hate online along with the Fusion edges, although I do like the Fusion edges a bit more than the average person. And I've used these in songs just fine. No issues with the wiring, the electronics, the switching, or anything like that. The output jack hasn't come loose. The potentiometers aren't scratchy at all. They're fine. The switch hasn't come unwired. Talking more about the sound in terms of the pickups, you have to ask yourself, do you really need those boutique, top-of-the-shelf, expensive pickups? In an A/B test, bare-knuckle pickups might outpace these by miles. But in a full mix with your favorite presets or your favorite amp settings, after you've mixed and mastered everything, the average listener is going to be hard-pressed to be able to tell if you're using the V7, V8 stock pickups, if you're using bare-knuckle aftermaths, Fishman-Fluence moderns, etc. I do find too that the position 4 clean tone I really like. So to summarize my thoughts on the sound of these Genesis guitars, if your amp settings are good enough or if your plug-in presets are good enough, these will get you all the way there. All right, now let's move on to talking about Prestige guitars. I'm going to be talking about guitars at various price points, but we're going to start with this one right here. And this would be an example of a used guitar. Although I am the first owner, this is a 2013 Ibanez RG655. And I'm considering it used because you can see I've modified it. I've had my fun with it. There's some chips on the body. The pickups obviously have been changed. These are bare knuckle aftermaths. I've pulled out the middle single coil. I've put a 3-way switch on here. This basically summarizes a used Ibanez guitar. So the neck is pretty solid. I do find this is a very thin neck. It's thinner than almost all the other guitars I'm going to be talking about today. I'm not sure if that's just a fluke with this one because I don't have another model from this year to compare it with, but that is worth noting that you're going to have a slightly different playing experience with something used versus maybe something new. Of course, it's been played in. The fretboard edges are a little bit rounded from playing. The frets are wearing down some. As you probably figured, I do distribute my playing across multiple guitars. So if you're buying from someone who's only had the one guitar or a few guitars and they've played a lot, you might need to consider a refret. I'd say the body is pretty resonant, but of course the finish is damaged. And I want to say there's something about older guitar. I know it's not 1980s or anything, but there's something about an older guitar where the body, the character feels different, but I don't have any quantitative data to show you to back this up. Let's talk more about the pickups. Of course, I've changed the pickups. There will be a bunch of models that will have the DiMarzios it came with, the Tone Zone Air Norton, but a lot of people who do buy Ibanez guitars tend to change out the pickups. So these bare knuckle pickup aftermaths, they're pretty bright. They're not harsh on the top end, but they're not going to sound quite as full as the Tone Zone or Air Norton would. They have a different character of sound, definitely. And that would be something to consider. Not that all the used Ibanez are going to have BKPs, but the used guitar you're buying might have pickups that won't suit your needs. Overall, the quality, the modifications, everything is something you're inheriting from the past owner. You're inheriting their changes, you're inheriting their playwear, and you're inheriting their mistakes. So quality can vary. Now I'm going to move on to this guitar. This is an RG652. There are various Prestige models at different price points. The price point this is at, it's not the most expensive Prestige you can get. It's not cheap. I think currently these are over 1,700 USD. So already it's a big jump from the Genesis. This doesn't have the stainless steel frets or the ebony fretboard as the Prestiges at higher price points. Although one thing about this guitar is it is one of the few Prestiges that has a maple fretboard. In terms of playability though, I'd say it plays just about as well as the Genesis. Of course, with the exception that you are getting the all-access neck joint. You don't have the tilt joint that it has. No square blocker or anything. So then technically it would be more playable playing up here. Although the tilt joint isn't bad by any means. It does come with all the Ibanez hardware you like, same bridge as the Genesis. Although with this finish, you can kind of see it has corroded a little bit and some of the Cosmo, I think it's called, coloring has worn off. It doesn't affect the functionality of the bridge, it's just a cosmetic thing. And buying a new guitar means you're not inheriting the mistakes of the previous owner. So to summarize the differences, you get all the modern features, just about the same great playability, but at a significant price increase from a new Genesis. Moving on to Prestiges at a higher price point, here is an RG5320 in Cosmic Shadow. And this guitar ended up being one of my best playing guitars. It has a very stable neck, and it has the perfect amount of coating or treatment or whatever they put on the back of these Prestige necks. It is worth noting that the Prestige I was just talking about and the Genesis didn't have nearly as much. And the purpose of this coating is to make it feel more played in. So naturally, as you play the other guitars over time, it will get basically the same feeling. I do have to say that the neck profile on Prestiges at this price point feels a bit different. It feels just slightly thicker. And when you play them back to back, it does feel just a bit more substantial. It's not as big of a difference between, say, J Custom and a Pia or Gem, but you can definitely tell there's a bit more wood here. I find this guitar plays pretty consistently across the seasons. I haven't had to set it up too many times over the course of me owning it. It stays in tune pretty well. I like using it for longer recording sessions. And the parts quality is pretty great. You can see here we have the low pro bridge. It is a super comfortable bridge. It's one of my favorite bridges. You do have the same cosmetic, the finish is wearing off, but everything feels pretty smooth. You don't have any fine tuner issues on the previous models I just talked about, but these especially turn nicely. The switch feels just that much better. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's placebo, but the switch does feel solid. No issues with the potentiometers at all. Of course, the pickups, they're the Fusion Edges. I find they actually get the job done pretty well. But it's true these aren't the Fishman Fluents or DiMarzios that you might want. Overall, the Prestige at this price point, I find it is one of my most reliable guitars. And if you're willing to buy a Prestige to spend that money on one, if I was going to go back and just buy one Prestige, it would be this one. And then there's this guitar, the Ibanez RG550. You do save some money by not getting a floating bridge. You've got the Gibraltar Standard 2 here. I think now there's a 3. I haven't played one yet, but I'm sure that bridge is great. But you can qualify this as kind of in the same almost tier of Prestige because it does have the ebony fretboard, the stainless steel frets. The switch feels just as solid. You can see it has a matte finish and body binding, and the body binding is nice and flush. So it's good to know that they're not covering up any binding mistakes. But the neck profile on this, it does feel pretty much the same as the 5320. So it's another data point where if you're buying a Prestige with these features, you're going to be getting a uniform playing experience across models. And then rounding off the discussion, I do have this J Custom here. We can talk about it real quick. This is a fantastic guitar. Basically everything you would hope an Ibanez could be. Although saying that, I do recognize too, it doesn't have some of the features that some of us want. This has the nickel silver frets. It doesn't have the stainless steel frets, for example. Although the toughness and durability and smoothness of these frets I find is greater than the other made in Japan models with nickel silver frets. So these frets do feel more solid and smooth than on the Genesis or the 652. It is a fantastic playing and sounding instrument, although you have to ask, is it 3 times more fantastic than the Genesis? Well, let's get into that. It does have the Tone Zone Air Norton combination that other Prestiges do. Some may object to that. Maybe you will want more boutique, more top-end pickups. I've grown to really love this pickup combination, so I'm actually pretty thankful it has these in here. Let's talk about the action, setting the action. Now, the setup on this guitar, I've set it up a few times as the seasons have changed over the course of me owning this guitar. It might be a fluke, but on my 5320, I can get the action just as low as on this. Some days the Prestige is actually even better. And it might be because of the neck. This is basically the thinnest neck I have on any of my guitars. It does take some getting used to. Of course, if you're buying an Ibanez, you would expect a thin neck, but this is the thinnest. And through the days, months, years of playing it, you do notice, okay, this neck is really thin. My technique has to be on point, or else it is going to strain my hand some. But I also find when I do need to play something really fast, and I'm not a virtuoso by any means, so when I really need to focus and nail the part, this is one of the guitars I reach for. So the playability is really good, yes, but is it that much better than a Prestige? Is it worth it? Well, some Prestiges, yes. But it can really come down to the conditions of the day versus my most favorite guitars, versus the 5320. And I'm not saying all RG5320s are going to be on par with the J Custom. But what I'm getting at is this worth the price tag? Well, maybe not. You can get pretty good results with a Prestige or even a Genesis and save a ton of money. I would recommend a J Custom if you're a huge Ibanez fan. It will be everything you're hoping it to be. Although having said that, having such an expensive and beautiful instrument will evoke many emotions in people. Some people will love it. Some people will really resent it. The expectations on you too will be much higher when you play a guitar like this. Although performing music in front of people, you get all kinds of people. So overall, is a Prestige better than a Genesis? Well, objectively, yes. Some of them will have the modern features like stainless steel frets that the Genesis doesn't have. The Prestiges have the all-access neck joint where this does not. But should you spend extra for a better guitar? Because the Genesis is not a bad guitar by any means. It's a really good guitar. It really depends what you're going to be doing. Is the guitar going to be beaten up and potentially stolen? Maybe you'll want to spend less money on a guitar that will eventually be replaced. Do you really need the best guitar possible to accomplish what you're trying to do? And the Genesis is not a budget guitar by any means. Let's not lose perspective on how much it costs. Guitars that cost twice as much are not necessarily twice as good. There are diminishing returns. The J Custom is not 3 times as good as a Genesis. The more expensive Prestiges are not necessarily twice as good as a Genesis. So which guitar would I pick if I can only pick just one? Well, I do want to encourage you to be financially responsible. Maybe consider the Genesis. It's a fantastic guitar. You can ask yourself, can you live with not having an all-access neck joint? If I was only going to pick one guitar, though, I would pick a Prestige. It has the stainless steel frets that I personally prefer, the Prestige at this price point. It's been my most solid, my most reliable guitar. And you do get that all-access neck joint. As a supplement, though, I would recommend a Genesis. And you could argue if you don't need an all-access neck joint, well, there you go. You could buy this guitar and have enough money for a pickup swap, for a refret if you really have to have those stainless steel frets, for whatever modifications you want. But hey, what do you think? Is the top-of-the-line Prestige worth it? Would you save up for a J Custom? Does the Genesis check all of your boxes? Be sure to comment down below. This is YouTube, so I have to say the YouTube things. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video, print out every frame and mail it, join the Discord. If you're looking for something cool to listen to, I've got my music on all major streaming services like Spotify. I do video game covers. I do some originals. I just made a 3-song release of original Baroque neoclassical theme songs. Check it out if you like. And as always, peace.